Hey everyone, Nick Marzinski here from TrappingLight.com, and in this video I want to continue discussing Photoshop blend modes because I really only scratched the surface in last week's video, and there's a bunch more cool things that they can do, so let's jump right in. Now, by way of introduction and by way of review, blend modes are a tool in Photoshop that allows you to choose how one layer, which we'll call the blend layer, which I've got here in my layers palette, interacts with the layer or the layers that are below it, such as the base layer. Now, by default, the blend mode is set to normal, but you have a whole bunch of different options available to you in the blend mode dropdown, which is located right here in the layers palette. Now, in the last video, I looked at two different types of blend modes. I looked at blend modes that darken an image, which are these blend modes up here. And specifically, I looked at multiply. If multiply is applied, again, the white becomes invisible, the black stays as black, and the 50% gray darkens the image. So multiply is a darkening blend mode. If you use this on an image, or if you use this with a layer in your image, it will make your image darker. The other kind of blend modes that we looked at in the last video were the lightning blend modes, which is this second group of blend modes here. And in that case, I specifically focused in on screen, which lightens the image. And again, black is completely invisible, white stays the way it is, and this 50% gray portion here lightens the purple. So all of the blend modes that are in this second group here will have a brightening effect on your image. Okay, and today in this video I'm going to move on to the next set of blend modes right here, which are all about boosting the contrast in an image. And these blend modes are generally, when I'm using blend modes, these are where I'm spending most of my time. Now, just like before, I've got my reference image from last week. Setting it back to normal on the blend mode, I've got the black, the 50% gray, and the white, and it's above a purple base layer. Okay, so any blend mode changes that I make, as I've already demonstrated, will allow you to see portions of the base layer below them. Now, with this top blend layer selected, I'm going to change the blend mode here to overlay. Now, what this does is, the first thing that you're going to notice is that this 50% gray section here is completely invisible. We can now see the purple directly beneath it. Okay? And the black section, rather than staying black as it did when I was using multiply, now darkens the purple beneath. And at the same time, the white section here, which when we were using screen stayed as white, and when we were using multiply became completely invisible, now this white section here brightens the purple. Okay, so when I said that this group of blend layers in the palette here boosts contrast, this is really what I'm talking about. The darks get darker, so instead of being this base purple, this purple now is taken on a much darker color, but the lights get brighter. And in applying that, with this particular blend mode of overlay, 50% gray completely disappears. Okay, so we get a sense of how this, just by this reference image, we get a sense of how this can boost contrast, but just applying an overlay blend mode to a layer, yeah, it'll change the contrast a bit, but we can actually be much more creative. So in order to demonstrate how that works, I'm going to switch to a real image of my youngest daughter. This one was taken right around the 4th of July, obviously when it was a lot warmer than it is right now in February. And it was a candid shot, and you know, she was, I think, 6 years old at the time, so because obviously 6-year-olds move really fast and this is really candid, I didn't have a whole lot of time to really set it up, so I wasn't able to, I didn't have a flash with me, and so you can see that her face is darker than I think that I would want. And there are a number of things that I would fix about the contrast in this image. But what I want to do is I want to make local adjustments to the contrast. Now, generally, when you're making local adjustments, that's called dodging and burning, which are terms from the holdover from darkroom film days, where burning an image would mean selectively darkening it, and dodging an image would selectively lighten it. Now, back in the darkroom, those kind of edits were a real pain to do, but today Photoshop gives us dodge and burn tools that are right here in the toolbar that can be used much more easily to produce the same effect. So let's say that I want to selectively brighten part of the image, for example, her face. I select my dodge tool and I come over here and I just dodge on the face and dodge on her arm there, and you can see that that brightens this part of the image. Now, the problem with doing it the way that I just did is that I'm being destructive. In my layers palette here, I'm doing these edits directly on my background layer. I'm painting directly on the image. So if I save and close this image, I won't be able to easily undo these dodging and burning changes. So using what we know now about blend modes, let's see if we can do the same thing non-destructively. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to create a new layer, and it's just simply a blank layer, and I'm going to label it dodge and burn so that I know what's going on there. And then I'm going to fill it with 50% gray by pressing Shift and F5, which brings up the fill dialog. In my contents, I am going to select 50% gray and click OK. Now, right now, the blend mode here is set to normal. So all I see is just a window of 50% gray. But when I change my blend mode to overlay, that 50% gray layer completely disappears. It's still there. You can still see it in the layers palette. But remember that the overlay blend mode renders 50% gray completely invisible. But at the same time, it makes my darks darker and my lights brighter. So if I want to use it to burn and dodge, all I have to do is, instead of using the dodge and burn tool on this background layer, I can instead use it on this dodge and burn layer, this 50% gray layer. Wherever I paint with the dodge tool is going to brighten the 50% gray layer. Wherever I paint with the burn tool will darken it, and that's what's going to happen to my image. So with the dodge tool selected and my dodge and burn layer selected, I'm going to simply paint on her face, and you can see that again it's brightening the image, but it's completely non-destructive. If I want to undo the change, all I have to do is just simply disable the dodge and burn layer, and I get right back to my original background image. No changes made to the original image, and I can always get back to it. So that's what I'm talking about when I mean non-destructive. And if I select the dodge and burn layer and change it back to normal, you can see what's happening here. You can see in a very subtle sort of way that this layer is no longer completely 50% gray. The area that I ran over with the dodge tool now is a little bit lighter, and this overlay blend mode is picking up on that and translating that to the finished image. So I can just keep going with this and dodge her hair and dodge this part of her arm here to brighten it up and make it match the original tone. At the same time, there's areas of this image that I'd prefer to darken. For example, the background. What I really want is I want the focus of this image to be on my daughter. I don't care so much about the rest of this extraneous stuff that's happening in the background. So one way to deal with that is to deliberately darken it using the burn tool. Now, I can come over here and I can just switch right over to burn. However, if I'm using the dodge tool or the burn tool, all I have to do is hold down the Alt key or the Option key on my keyboard, and it automatically switches to the other tool. So if I want to burn, even though I've got my dodge tool selected, if I hold down the Alt key and start painting, you can see right here that it's painting in a darker color because it's darkening the image. It's using the burn tool, and that's all that's done is me painting with this dodge tool while holding down the Alt key on a PC or the Option key on a Mac. So I'm darkening the background here to really put the viewer's attention on the center of the image, right on my daughter. So I'm going to darken up here, and then I'll just reduce the size of the brush a little bit and darken right there and darken right there as well. The other great thing about using this dodge and burn tool, as opposed to, say, getting a brush and painting with black and white on this dodge and burn layer, which is certainly something you can do, is that the dodge and burn tools are cumulative in terms of how they apply an effect. So if I want an area of the image darker, say for example her hair, all I have to do is paint over it successive times and it gets darker. So you know, if I don't like how if I want something to be darker, I just use the burn tool and paint on it more. If I want it to be brighter, I use the dodge tool and I make successive strokes, brush strokes on that portion of the image to brighten it. And so now that everything is changed in terms of contrast, this is the before, where her face was a little bit darker, the background was still kind of bright, and this is the after, where now she's clearly the focal point in this image. I've brightened up her face to get rid of some of the harsh shadows that were there and her arm, and I've darkened the background of the image to really make the viewer focus on that central part of the image where she is. So that's it for dodging and burning using an overlay layer, but we're still not finished with the overlay blend mode yet. In the next video I'm going to be talking about how you can use it to add some really great textures to your image. In the meantime, have fun dodging and burning. I hope you enjoyed the video. Again, my name is Nick Marzinski with TrappingLight.com. Thanks for watching.